Hey guys, welcome back. BDCKR here. We're back with Season 7, Episode 10, Take 2.
Take 2? Oh my god, seriously.
Of our weekly Q&A videos.
So,
the description, if you're on the YouTube video, you can check this out on most, if not all, the major podcasting platforms. And we say Take 2 because we just did the first 16 minutes and then realized that the clicking play part of, or clicking record part of the process on Audacity did not happen.
I'll take the blame for that. I clicked it, and I clicked onto the other, and it sort of, the video playing obscures the Audacity window.
Yeah, and I looked at it with suspicion after 16 minutes, so that's gone. We will be answering the same questions again. We might be a little snappier with them, just because we've maybe mined the conversational value out of those personally. But we will try to soldier on, and hopefully it'll sound just as spontaneous as the first time. It's not like we're working from the script is the good news. Because if we were reading a script, that would be really brutal. To do just the same 16 minutes over again.
Yeah.
But at least...
But it'd be easier, actually.
It would be easier, but...
Because the work would have been done up front.
We can actually maybe come to something new here, though.
Okay.
Instead of just... I still think 16 minutes worth of script would have been way worse to just have to read through it again. I think that would have been a real slog.
You know what would have been worse? Would be to write 16 minutes of script. I would hate that.
That's true. But our first question comes from Uncut Gem 83, and they said, "When y'all getting an iPhone, bruh?"
Never.
Yeah,
never.
So I guess...
Is that that's what we ended up coming to at the end of it?
We didn't end up coming to that at the end of it. We started right there. Which is, we don't like iPhone as much as we like Android devices. Personal preference, it's almost entirely based off of price. Some of it's based off of customizability, because, we both have custom icon packs. We both are using a launcher to do that.
Right.
So, we have our home screens set up nice and clean with no, app labels, and everything's black and white. We've got a theme and aesthetic going on, and I quite like that. The funny thing is, I don't actually get the full benefit because I'm thinking of upgrading phones soon. It will not be to an iPhone, but the one thing, because I don't do anything that's super graphics intensive on the phone, I want a decent battery life, and what I really want is actually an OLED display.
To save power when it's black.
Well, the colors are much nicer, so it's a much better visual experience. But so we have black and white themes, right? So I've got sort of black and gray background where it's really dark gray, but it's basically just full black background. And I have all white app icons, including some that I've designed for myself for my apps that didn't have color. And then, I've got some games that are tucked away in a folder that have color on them because I can't be bothered to make a new app icon every time I try out a new game.
Yeah. And we don't have, the phones we've got right now do not have OLED displays.
Yeah, so we're not getting the full value out of it, but...
But it's still, from a practical point of view, I can actually reduce the brightness on my screen lower than I would have otherwise with a non-black and white theme, because it's still got the contrast to be able to see everything. I
think it looks nice, easy on the eyes, and so that sort of customizability is great with Android. And I do understand that, Apple devices are, for phones especially, they're quite, good. They've got great cameras for a lot of the stuff that people use them for. iPhones, totally work. It's just that for the price, it's not like we'd be buying a top of the line new model anyways.
Right.
So we're looking for cheaper, and so we're not buying the brand new Samsung, which means that we are getting our devices for cheaper, not getting them from Apple.
Right.
And the other point is that even if we were, wouldn't make sense to do another full Injustice account to be able to make videos for Injustice from. No matter how much we were getting for it, even if it was going to pay itself off, but it is absolutely not going to pay itself off at this point. So
it's not like there'd be a secondary use for it anyways, right? As a phone, I guess, but I actually don't want that. The customizability to me actually has value.
Yeah. So it's a device that we would like for the amount that it would cost us less than the other equivalent options, right? If we were buying a top-of-the-line phone, it would be an Android. And it's not something that we would invest in personally. It doesn't make sense for us to invest in it professionally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I think the first time we did this,
yeah,
we went off on a a bit of a tangent.
Do you want to try to go off on the same tangent?
Well, I want to make the same point, though. Like, what I appreciated was how somebody framed the idea that what Apple does really well is that they have an idea of how they want you to use their devices.
Yeah.
And then they make it so that that experience for that one particular pathway is really smooth, it's really comfortable, it's really easy, it's a good experience. The problem is they don't account for all the other ways that people want to use their devices, and that lack of customizability makes it difficult. So,
and then my line is that for mobile devices, there's a lot more inherent restriction anyways, right? Even on Android. But then when you talk about desktop and laptops, that's where the stuff opening up actually matters a lot more, where you want to do weird stuff with it.
Right.
And find yourself not able to more often.
So the laptop that we're doing this on was relatively cheap. It's Canadian 1200. So what's that, like $50 American? No. It's probably like 800 American. And this I bought like a year and a half ago. At the time it was an i7, and what's it was the latest generation. It was cutting edge. It was some sort of price error.
I don't remember.
But it's great, and it was easy to open it up and upgrade the hard drive. So it's got one solid state NVMe hard drive, and now it's also got one solid state storage kind of drive in it too.
Yeah.
And so the other thing that we talked a little bit about, so that's the computer that we do half of it on, but the other half of our videos, we do it on the desktop that is 9 years old now. It was 2011. I was actually looking at the receipt recently when I had to decide if it was worth fixing, because it failed 2 weeks ago. This is the same story I'm telling again. It failed 2 weeks ago. It just wouldn't turn on. And what I love about...
I had to live it, and now I'm hearing it for the second time.
I had to live it, and I had to tell the story twice, and you have to live through the telling twice now. But it was easy to diagnose the problem. It was the power supply. It was easy to order it. The part came in 2 days, and it was easy for me to do it myself.
Yeah, and so there's definitely some advantage for going for non-Apple hardware. It's not Windows hardware, right? It's just...
it's a
Windows computer, though, I guess.
Oh yeah, for sure, and it's the it's this desktop now is like a Frankenstein, right? Like the only part that's really original is, besides the case, is the motherboard and the CPU, because it's an old motherboard that won't take any other CPUs that were made after 2011, and it's got the case, I think, won't fit any other motherboard. I think I probably would have swapped that out a while ago if I'd had that option. And so everything else, the beauty of it is that everything else I could probably bring to a new machine, because when I swapped out the power unit, instead of going with the same power, which was like 500 watts, went to 750. And, this is the point that I thought was interesting. It's worth repeating, just because I didn't realize this until I did. Maybe there's some value to other people who are building computers. Power units are rated not just by wattage. That's not the most important thing. Just as important is they have a bronze, gold, platinum thing, and that has to do with how efficient it is at redistributing the power from the power outlet to the different parts, your components in your computer, because the more efficient it is, it's not just wasting energy, it's
creating heat.
Yeah, if it's anything that's wasted is generating heat in your computer, and it's going to make things run poorly and maybe make parts fail.
That's one thing that's really funny. It's just a separate point, and we didn't talk about this last time. This is fresh. I learned from the YouTube channel Technology Connections that space heaters are the only electronic device that runs at 100% efficiency. Because
it runs it. For what it's meant to do.
Yeah, exactly. Because your normal percent efficiency is how much is wasted to heat. Because energy waste can only turn into heat.
Right.
That's the only way that electricity wastes energy. So if you have a space heater, it always runs at 100% efficiency.
Okay, so
it's supposed to create heat.
Counterpoint: if you look at the space heater, the filament is actually red.
Yeah, but that's heat.
So some of it's light. So some of it is being is transforming into light, and it's not heat. It's actually just...
But light still creates heat energy. The light is not escaping the bounds of your house. It's not escaping the bounds of the device. So the light is turning into heat at whatever it hits.
I'm not sure that it does. I believe that there's some of the light that, say, you see that enters the back of your eyeball that gets translated
that creates a little bit of heat in the back of your eyeball.
But there's still some
all the impact of the wave, all the energy of the wave disperses, and it goes into whatever it hits. That all turns eventually into heat.
I remain unconvinced. The amount is probably trivial, but the fact that it actually generates any kind of light means that there's some of it that's lost to not heat.
And the other thing that means, which was really interesting, which was, I'm just at this point parroting a fun fact from a different video, but it means that all space heaters, no matter the size or the price, all create heat in the same way. It's just how efficiently they disperse it in your house. So, all the space heaters, no matter what size they are about as effective as each other. So the big ones, they all have the same rating, and they all do the same thing, because they're just taking the electricity that your house puts in, and if you have them running on maximum, they should all do the same output, as long as they can handle the maximum current.
All right, so that's interesting, because so then if there's a difference in cost, you're sometimes paying for the brand, sometimes you're paying for the reputation, and sometimes you're paying for the better parts. And is it possible then that, so when you've got a charger that is rated for a maximum number of watts, but you can plug any device into it and they can all draw what they need.
Yeah.
Is it possible then that the current that comes out of the outlet, some devices are not able to take advantage of all of it, and that there's some of them that can actually work at a higher...
I think at this point you just want to watch the Technology Connections video, because it is an interesting video and it's an interesting channel. Although it's weirdly niche, sometimes I use the videos to help me fall asleep, because I find some of them interesting and then some of them are just like too long and about topics that I don't care about. But I figure, support a channel and just watch them for relaxation. But I think all of them, when he was looking at them and he was looking at the boxes actually in the store, all of them were rated to the exact same maximum. And the reason why is because when all you need to do is handle a lot of current, I guess you make a device that can do that.
Right.
And I don't think the internal components are particularly complicated in the case of space heaters. So, but, that's some interesting food for thought, a little bit related to...
all right, so now I want to go back and do some research for myself about the physics. That one question to me is, does all light become heat? Does all visible light become heat?
I think it does. I'm pretty sure it does.
All right, I think we've sort of boiled down to the fundamental question, so it should make it easier to look up.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Our next question comes from Why So Serious, and they say, is switching between two accounts on one device dangerous?
So the first time we answered this question, I sort of missed the distinction that we really should make at the beginning.
Yeah.
And that's...
Which is, it depends
the intent.
It depends on what you're talking about. If you're just talking about, you have two accounts that you maintain, you sign out of one account and you sign into another account, and you use the, new account. You use each account and what's contained in them separately. The way that we have multiple accounts and we swap between them. That's not dangerous. That's entirely safe. We maintain multiple accounts. We've swapped in and out of multiple accounts. We've been doing it for a long time, and we've never run into an issue related to having multiple accounts and signing out of one, then signing into another, sort of in the bounds of normal use.
Right.
Yeah.
The context of this question, though, was a recap video, and somebody actually responded with a link to the time where we talked about why it's dangerous for having two devices simultaneously on one account. And in that context, it actually is a little bit dangerous because of an idea called account bleeding. And not a lot of people talked about it. So because we started talking about it, we get to decide what the terms are. And we call it account bleeding because the idea is that something from one account ends up in the other account in a way that you lose it in one, you gain it in the other, and you can potentially screw up both of them. Mm-hmm. So it's something that doesn't happen consistently, excuse me, and happens sort of infrequently. So it makes me suspect that it's not something inherent in trying to exploit the ability to switch between accounts so that you achieve the same idea of the airplane mode / refund glitch by switching to the other account before it registers on your first one while you're offline. But The problem with that is if you can't reproduce it consistently to figure out what's causing it, whether it's something that you do because, let's face it, when you're doing refunds, you're doing it lots and lots of times. It's easy to make a mistake. Or it could be something that's happening not on your account, whether it's something happening on the server side, whether it's something that's more obvious, like it's the change of a season. If it just happens every once in a while, you don't know what you can do to prevent it. And this kind of technique has the potential for it. It doesn't seem like it's worth taking that kind of risk to at least in Android, for example, it's really easy to clear account data. And it's easy enough and it's foolproof enough so that if you screw up, the worst that'll happen is that you just wasted your time and you'll have to do it again, not that you'll screw up your account. Because I've seen where when you have account bleeding, so one account has a team in multiplayer.
Yeah.
You switch to another team that...
Another account
that has a different team multiplayer, but somehow that team switches over. And if any of those characters that are in multiplayer were not supposed to be on that account, you've just screwed up that account. It means that you've lost the character. You can't get it again. It does something funky with the number or the copies of that character in the account, so that even if you unlock the challenge, what happens is you get into a loop where when you finish the normal level, it just boots you back out and it resets back to normal level. It looks like it keeps on trying to give it to you, but you never get it. Or if you buy a pack and it happens to be a pack, instead of actually getting it added to your account, you get a refund for the amount in the pack, but you just don't get anything, which is super frustrating and not worth it. It's, I guess part of it is, I mean, we've got a history, right, of a few years. There have probably been dozens of times where we've done that, and once we saw that account bleeding was happening and we couldn't figure out exactly what the steps were to cause it to happen, is when we abandoned the idea of it being a useful tool for exploiting.
So there we go. Our next question comes from Ha, or H-A, and they say, how are y'all holding up among the pandemic?
Who wants to go? You want to go first?
I can go first, yeah. So I am not doing summer school because I find it a little soul-crushing. I find that I need that break in between. And even if university's break ends up going a little longer than necessary, I normally work over the summer. But the one thing is that I'm not sure if my work is actually going to be running. I still have to figure that out.
Well, the kind of work, if it's going to be the same kind of job, I don't think it lends itself to the kind of...
remote work at all, yeah.
Right, or social distancing either.
Yeah. And so, in terms of... I think what ended up happening is I ended up adjusting faster than I was expecting, and it ended up not being as big of an adjustment as I was expecting. It's been a little weird sort of getting used to exclusively and only talking to people online, and I think that definitely also has selected out who I talk to a little bit, because there are some people that I was used to, keeping in touch with online, and there was also the kind of people that I'd hang out with where it would be mostly in person, right? And it wouldn't be that it was infrequently in person, it would be, like maybe once a week, right? Kind of thing. And so that's been interesting, but I think getting adjusted to it, and we've been, wherever possible, social distancing. So because I don't have any obligations for going out, I haven't interacted with any of my friends outside, except for one person who lives in our neighborhood who I saw on a walk.
In real life, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One person in our neighborhood who I saw on a walk, and one person who was who came back to our neighborhood to visit family, and we went on a socially distanced walk while they were here. But other than that, it's just been people who live in the house and random strangers that you nod at as you're passing by them if you're on a walk.
And if either of you are wearing masks, you lose even that ability to read people's facial expressions, right?
Yeah. But you get used to doing stuff online. I've been catching up on because this is the start of my break. Anyways, the first little bit I probably would have been not that different. Which is I'm catching up on games and stuff. The main thing that I'm missing out on is I think hanging out with all the other people that are back from university for the summer, and we make an effort to sort of do stuff online. So it's not awful. I imagine that there's going to be a point. I'm looking for either making sure that my work is planning on reopening, which I don't even know if I'd be comfortable going if they were. Is the one problem.
Right.
Just in terms of being exposed to so many people, although we don't have anybody at risk here.
Right.
Nobody like really old or immunocompromised or anything. So
or obesity's turning out to be a really big risk factor, right?
Yeah, or with life-threatening pre-existings.
Right.
So from that perspective, it's slightly more okay if I wanted to, but just from a sort of social responsibility perspective, I still don't. It's not like I'm saying, oh, great, I can just get it now, right?
Right.
And then maybe finding other work potentially give me something to do. But, this first few weeks has been hanging out with people online and playing a lot of video games, so that's not too bad.
Yeah, there's one word that you used that stood out for me, which was adjusting. I think if they'd asked us this question a few weeks ago, we might have had a different answer.
I would just said, stuff's really weird.
Yeah, it is. And it felt like, when we were seeing reports of shortages of toilet paper and food and whatever.
Yeah, and all the preppers who are going, see, told ya.
Yeah, what's funny is, okay, so I now so many... We're sort of hitting the point where we're branching off from where we finished last time, right?
Yeah.
But so many ideas. I mean, the preppers weren't really prepping for this kind of thing.
No.
Where the idea, I think, for some people at least, there's at least a fantasy of you're being prepared. Because you're prepared, people are going to want your stuff. You're going to actually be in a position of, is it power so much as being in a position where...
Security.
Yeah, or... people will envy what you have because you've got stuff that they want.
Yeah.
And you're going to need guns to defend yourself. And it's actually flipped because instead of having to do something, the real heroes, I mean, besides frontline workers, the heroes are as individuals are the ones that are actually helping their community by
staying home and doing nothing.
And doing nothing. Yeah. So... Because, all right, so I work at a job that's considered essential. Up until a couple weeks ago, I was still going in every day. And it's only been the last couple weeks that they've tried to decrease the volume of people at the physical space of my work because they consolidated 2 locations, so a lot more people, and they cut back to the number of people they want in the office at any given time. So now I'm going in 2 days a week, and maybe even a little bit less depending on the week.
Yeah.
Which is weird. And so it's great because I'm saving on a lot of commute time.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not nearly as great as it could be because I got to enjoy all the empty highways, and it's that nice transition between work and home and home and work.
Yeah, because you're working more than your full hours here. You're like working during the time that you would be commuting.
Yeah.
Both ways. And then a lot of times you're still working outside of that. So you're working outside of the more than you would from the moment that you would leave the home to the moment you get back. You're working for that entire time and then some. A lot of days.
Yeah, because so the commute was shorter already. Now on the days I stay home, the commute's non-existent. And I can't bring myself to sleep in. It just doesn't seem right. So I'm still getting prepared. I'm ready to start. So I start earlier. And then when I'm in the middle of something where I'm actually getting some satisfaction from work and I feel like I'm getting somewhere, I feel like I can't stop. As opposed to when I'm at work, I think, 5 o'clock.
Gotta go home.
I will finish this tomorrow.
Yeah.
And it's almost...
You almost need to set alarms for yourself.
Well, you know what I have to set alarms for is when there's a meeting. I can't tell you the number of meetings that I was meant to chair.
Yeah.
Where
that you're late for.
I was late for the meeting and they had to start without me.
You need to set a lot of alarms. You need to set an alarm for the time that you're actually supposed to show up at work. Maybe you just need to go out and sit in your car and listen to music in the driveway. For
half an hour?
For half an hour in the morning. Not actually, but, do something.
Because even before, like when the restrictions first started and everybody else was not going to work, it was ridiculous how much time I saved. Instead of taking an hour to get home or get into work, taking the regular highway, there's another highway that's usually sort of packed and I'm at a total loss for words, where the traffic is at a standstill. Traffic gridlocked. It's taking me half that time to get into work.
Yeah.
And on the way home, where I used to have to take the toll highway because I thought it's worth it because at the end of the day I just want to get home. Mm-hmm. I'm getting home in about the same time as the toll highway, but on the regular highway.
Yeah. So you're saving money, you're saving time.
And, you know, that 30 minutes, 25, 30 minutes is actually a nice way to decompress either way, right? So
Yeah.
either psych myself up for work or decompress and be ready to be home and in the moment and not thinking about work at all. And I just don't have that separation anymore.
Yeah, so now you're just working at random times.
I'm working at random times. So it's not, but it doesn't bother me so much as it did at the beginning, where it just felt like stuff was really weird.
Yeah.
And right now, just we have adjusted, and we've gotten into a bit of a routine now.
Mm-hmm. The number of people that have said we should start a podcast, like, to me,
Oh yeah,
has been interesting. Just because people want to do something right now, because people are cooped up. People are like, oh, we should start a podcast. We should do another podcast, right? Because they know I do something. I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's not that hard to set up an RSS feed. I could do a second podcast.
Right.
So I think that's interesting.
Right.
Yeah, all the podcast mics sold out.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Because a lot of teachers and stuff, educators, people who were doing online lessons also had to get mics, right? Because their onboard stuff is really crappy. So people who care about it, right? Anybody who needs to, meetings, right?
Right.
At this point, having a good mic is another way of projecting professionalism.
Right.
Right? Which nobody wouldn't necessarily have before. Especially if you work in an office space, right? Where you've got tech people who set up meetings. Now a way for somebody to project professionalism as much as this, suit, it's having clean audio and having a good feed,
Wow. Okay, I hadn't thought about that. I wonder how I sound, because when I'm listening at those meetings at work, I'm finding myself unreasonably annoyed
at how crappy everybody else sounds.
And I wonder how bad mine sounds.
But you have a proper mic.
Except sometimes I don't use it. Sometimes I have to call in on the phone because the computer, there's something wrong going, like some incompatibility or some problem with the software, or the link they gave me is no good.
Yeah.
So I will call into the meeting, and I'm using like a phone headphone. I wonder how crappy that sounds.
Yeah, I mean, so for everybody who's already had mics from previous things, I've also had people ask to borrow my mic for different stuff.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering how they would get at it.
Well, it wouldn't be our main one. It would be the Snowball, right? But you're using that.
Yeah, I'm using that one for work. So I'm glad at least I have that. I can at least maintain the facade of professionalism.
Yeah. But yeah, interesting times. I think there's a lot of stuff that's happening, but I think we are exceptionally lucky. Comparatively,
for sure.
We are
no doubt.
Absolutely exceptionally lucky in that we are able to be doing all right, because a lot of people have different uncertainty in terms of their work, uncertainty in terms of health, right? And people's situations are drastically changing, and our situation's changing, I think, pretty much the minimum amount that any person in the world's life has changed since this has started.
So I want to point out something that maybe doesn't that would have been different again if somebody had asked us a week ago, is that we just recently got some good news.
Yeah.
Family member who lives in long-term care.
Yeah.
Who is particularly vulnerable, was diagnosed with COVID-19. Mm-hmm. It's, I guess, based on a swab that was done 3 weeks ago. We only got the result, I think, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
They were sick. Not nearly as bad as it could have been. It looks like they got a really mild form of it.
Yeah.
And the repeat testing just in the last couple of days was negative.
Yeah, so it looks like they've, they're on the road to recovery. They're still, working through that cough, but didn't get anywhere near the point where we were actively worried about their life.
And they're in their 80s.
Yeah.
So the good news is that they cleared it. The bad news is that there's been some description of clinical histories where people sort of have a second stage.
Recurrence?
I don't even know if it's a recurrence or whether there's like a false negative in the middle, or the original was a false positive and they actually get it more severely because it's a real infection later.
Yeah.
So I am still... I don't think we can just say, oh yeah, that's great, it's done, especially since there's the possibility that people may not develop long-term immunity.
Yeah.
But I think that sense of relief from finding out...
From immediate danger to sort of...
Right.
Back to where we were before, at worst. At worst, we're back to an uncertainty and fear that a family member will get COVID. But the default is actually that it's less likely that they'll get it again.
It was such a relief to hear that. I mean,
yeah. So I guess if you asked us this a week ago, our answer would be different for a lot of reasons.
Yeah,
we probably wouldn't have talked about it actually if it was
right, because that's not the kind of thing that you'd want to talk about until you know you've got some sort of resolution, right?
Yeah, and we're not even sharing that with everybody that we know casually. Never mind a variety of people that we have maybe met before, but in all likelihood are largely strangers.
Right. But it's top of mind now because this is just what happened. And I guess I'm in terms of thinking about the pandemic and thinking about it not on necessarily a personal level.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it affects us, but we're not the ones that are sick. Mm-hmm. But it's still. I mean, this is one of those things where you get used to stuff, and in your mind, it's not like you're spending the day running around anxious and like a chicken with your head cut off, but. It's got to have some impact on how we've been sleeping and how rested or not rested we are when we wake up.
Oh, my sleep schedule is so wild. I'm staying up at all hours.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it's bizarre. Well, I have some things, right, where they happen at certain times, but when I'm scheduling stuff with my friends, I'm like, oh, let's do it early afternoon because I definitely will be up by then, and then I don't have to adjust my sleep schedule at all.
Yeah, that's what I'm afraid of. That's part of the reason why I don't want to sleep in, because I feel like when stuff...
It's gonna start shifting what your natural patterns are.
But I'm gonna have a little bit of struggle, so no point sort of letting myself go and having to to fight it later and just try to stick to a regular routine. And I feel like not. I feel ready. I'm ready for stuff to open. I don't need it to open up again, but I'm ready for stuff to get back to sort of like a proper kind of normal.
And so that was great. We often have a platform here to talk. What I think would be cool is I'd love to hear from some of you guys and hear how you guys are doing. If you have anything that you want to share with us, it'd be cool. If you leave a comment, I think we would also consider reading some out if we have stories and just sort of rebroadcasting what's going on with you guys, because I think this is a good time to be forging some sense of community. And, we don't have a ton of watchers, but the people that are watching have watched us for a while, and I think have put up with us sort of blabbering on. So if you want a chance to sort of poke yourself in here, everybody has something to say about how you've been doing, even if it's business as normal.
Right.
And we'd love to hear from anybody who wanted to share. Fair warning, if you do share and we read it out here, we might not have anything fun or interesting to say about it, but we'd be happy to hear from you. We do obviously read all of our comments, and we would love to hear from some of our audience and hear how people are doing. Hopefully good, but anybody who's in a place to share would be great to hear from.
Yeah, couldn't have put that better myself.
Yeah. So we don't have a ton of time here. We have a comment that I don't think we need to get into, which is just why never update the game.
I want to talk about that.
Oh, you do?
I do.
Okay, so Mary Grace Florendo says, why never update this game?
All right, so the funny thing about this is that they did update it recently.
Yeah. With bug fixes.
And okay, so it's even better than that because I've been experimenting with it a bit.
Yeah.
So all right, so it was all bug fixes, like you said. That was in the description.
Yeah.
And I think part of the reason why was because there was some sort of compliance issue with Google, and there's a potential of having it removed from the store if they didn't fix it. So at least it speaks to the potential for ongoing income to make it worthwhile for the developers to put in the minimum amount of effort to make it compatible and to keep on drawing whatever they were drawing before. So that's the one thing. So that's a good sign. The bad sign is that how fight 62, the last fight in the ladder, is broken?
Yeah.
Now the whole ladder is broken. I can't get into it to find out if they fixed the last fight so there's actual characters in it.
So they removed Fight 62 but kept the button.
Every time I click on Fight 62, the game crashes.
Uh-oh.
So I can get in the rest of the game. I've tried playing randomly different. I didn't try every single screen.
So it's double broken then.
It is doubly broken. So the ironic thing is, be careful what you wish for. I guess there's different lessons you can take from it, right? Be careful what you wish for, because they did try to fix it and they screwed it up some more.
Well, we don't know if they tried to fix Fight 62. You're assuming they did something to it. Probably.
They did something to it. So I'm being now in assuming that
some effort was made.
That some effort was made, but if anything, it's actually worse.
It's a really convenient quick game button. Now,
yeah,
right at the end of the fight page, you don't have to do anything else. You don't have to.
So we'll see. I mean, how long has it been? It's been a year and a bit, more than a year since the last update. We've still been, I was going to say, we've still been going strong, but we haven't been really that strong because there's been a lot more of the nattering on kind of videos like this and updates than there have been gameplay, but we've still been doing some gameplays.
I'm enjoying these, and we've got some people who will who continue to do things like support us on Patreon, which is an implicit endorsement. Really, I blame those people for enabling us, and showing their support, showing that they like us enough that we can just sort of continue going on our slow slide into talking about whatever we feel like at any given moment. We get that support when we talk about politics for too long and say sorry for talking about politics too long, and then somebody comes in and says talk about politics as long as you want.
Yeah. So that was our last question for this week. I wanted to talk about a few things that I noticed on Twitter. That's my main social media now. I guess that's supposed to be the balance between the young who do Instagram, the olds who are all on Facebook, and Twitter is like for everybody, right?
Twitter's for everyone, pretty much. Twitter's weird. There's a lot of... I think a lot of social media platforms sort of get a reputation for their average user, and I think Twitter has a diverse enough user base that it's sort of avoided that overall
stigma
classification. There's like a lot of like unexpectedly really bad people on Twitter, like a lot of like neo-Nazis and stuff on Twitter, but there's like a lot of weird content. It's something about it being so short form. I think both one really limits the kind of thing that there's not a lot of sprawling epics, right? But there's also like a really surprisingly wide variety of stuff that you can do with Twitter.
Yeah, there is. All right, so getting back to the original point of talking about Twitter, there's been a lot of threads about Lord of the Flies. And I think it has a lot to do with a recent article that came out on The Guardian. I'll link this in the description, about a situation where there were a number of schoolboys who literally were shipwrecked and they were lost for 15 months, living on their own on an island. And people are talking about it as a sort of refutation of the idea of the Lord of the Flies, where, I mean, did you do Lord of the Flies in high school?
No. And I also didn't read the article, so I'm going in double blind.
Okay.
I know the concept of Lord of the Flies, where there's a whole like hierarchy and it's brutal and everybody sucks.
Right. So all right,
and they're feral.
So you got the idea of it, where the takeaway, and I think this is probably a result of the age at which most people study this book.
Yeah.
And it's in early high school. I remember doing this in grade 9. And the thing that a lot of people take away from it, whether it's because they read it directly or because, like you've heard about it, right?
Yeah.
And the takeaway is that everybody sucks.
Yeah, like, we're all animals, and it's just society that's making us be polite to each other.
Right. And so I think that's not an unreasonable takeaway, given how young people are when they first read it, and how it's harder to get a sophisticated, nuanced take on it.
Yeah. Can I say one thing that's really funny to me? It always entertains me when people try to make sweeping generalizations about what a fictional book says about humanity.
Yeah.
Because I get that that's maybe the messaging of the book, but it's just really entertaining to me that when people take that as like, this is what people are like.
Gospel.
Well, it's a fiction book. They could have made them do anything they want. They could have made every single one of them make a mech suit. And that doesn't mean that humans' base nature is Iron Man, you know? Like, it's a fictional book, and just because you're trying to access something that feels like there's emotional truth in it, right? When people try to make a generalization about what real people are like based off of what one person wrote in a book for fake people doing to each other,
right?
It's always a little bit funny to me. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, no, that was actually one of the points I was going to make, so that's good on you, because you haven't read either the article or the book. That it's funny how the idea of a fictional story can have such an influence on how we see people, because that's probably one of the reasons why people will look or come to conclusion or justify their belief that people's nature is to be crappy.
Yeah, and because everybody just cooperating doesn't make for such good drama.
Right. So there's a number of places. One article that I found I really enjoyed, and I'll link that in the description too, is, and I'm just going to quote from it. Lord of the Flies is many people's touchstone for what would happen if order goes away, even though we have some good social science and other studies about how, at least in the short to medium term, people are generally quite altruistic and reciprocally helpful in the aftermath of disaster. Lord of the Flies is assumed by many to be a cautionary tale about order and the state of nature, when in reality it's the agonized working out of the unbearable fears of a group of systematically traumatized and loveless children. Lord of the Flies isn't an origin story about the human condition and the need for strong states, though we treat it as such, but rather is a horror story about the specific brutalized pathology of the English ruling class. And they tied it in a number of different places I've seen to the idea that a lot of the middle and upper class English people at the time would send their kids off to boarding school. So they would be sent to these places. So this was the idea of where they were loveless and brutalized.
Yeah.
Because at an age when they were really vulnerable and really needed and wanted a connection, they ended up. I mean, it almost, I don't want to say it because you may think of, Harry Potter, it's like this idealized version of what boarding school would be, but it's almost like a kind of jail. Not jail, but like a prison, like, like a really low security prison where you get visitation at holidays and maybe some weekends.
They ended up with not a lot of parental oversight and inconsistent quality of oversight in general.
So, and what I found out about William Golding, the author of the book, was that he was a bit of a dink. He acknowledged that he had a really pessimistic view of humans, and he was a bit of an alcoholic, and he beat his children.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, again, there's the power of I don't want to say good fiction, but well-written fiction to influence how we see people.
That's the fun thing, is that even if it was just supposed to be about human nature, right? It's like, it's just some dude. And a lot of really great stories are just written by some dude, and a lot of really great stories aren't even written by that great of a dude.
Right.
Right? Like Ender's Game is great, and it's written by a dick. If we tried to build our society based off of Ender's Game, right? Like we would, and that was supposed to be in, again, I haven't read Lord of the Flies, but it was supposed to be something that was a situation, a non-standard situation, one that we don't normally come into. That was grounded in real seeming characters and real emotion and real humanity, right? But if we try to take messages about, about what everybody would be like, it's, it doesn't mean anything. And it's interesting the way oftentimes the discussion is like it does mean something, and it means something specific that this fictionalized character killed that one.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. So we've got maybe like 2 minutes left, not even. The other thing that I noticed in the news that's top of my mind was, did you hear about that jogger who around February got killed? He was black, hunted down and killed by 2 white men in Georgia. So everybody's probably heard something about that. What hasn't gotten as much play is that the prosecutor who originally said back in February, there's no need to arrest these people. It was justified. It was self-defense and stuff, right? Yeah. Even after they'd had access to that video that everybody's seeing now.
Yeah, there was full evidence. Yeah.
Sure.
Unambiguous.
This same prosecutor, so I'm going to quote from an article from Slate. This prosecutor was thought it was worth a couple of years of time to prosecute a black woman, who had helped somebody else vote. That it was worth prosecuting voter fraud to the point that, let me just quote this, Barnhill's prosecution of Pearson was part of a larger campaign by then Secretary of State and now Governor Brian Kemp, Georgia's top elections official, to make vigilance against voter fraud a priority. I was alerted to the case while reporting on voter suppression efforts heading into the 2016 presidential election. Voting rights groups flagged Barnhill's prosecution as part of an obvious and well-orchestrated attempt to intimidate black voters. After all, Pearson was accused of simply showing a young woman how to use a voting machine, not of influencing her vote. It was an especially uncommon prosecution. At the time, only 10 of the 154 illegal voter assistance investigations in the previous 3 years in Georgia had been referred to a prosecutor. Most were closed without a ruling or dismissed, but Barnhill's office was relentless in pursuing what they saw as an important case, and Pearson's prosecution spanned 2 trials and 2 years. I covered Pearson's first trial in April 2017. It ended in a mistrial due to a 29-year-old black female juror named Lanisha Armour, the only juror to stand between Pearson and a felony conviction and a possible 15-year prison sentence. It was torture, Armour said at the time of disagreeing with the rest of the jury. I still have days when that wears on me, Pearson told me this week, because I think about what if that young juror had given in to their pressure, you know?
Yeah.
Barnhill's office quickly refiled the case, and the second trial was held in February 2018. This time, Pearson's prosecution had earned more attention around the state, and a number of local voters' rights groups helped her with her defense. That case ended with much less drama. Pearson was acquitted of all charges after less than 30 minutes of jury deliberations. Yeah.
Stark contrast.
Right.
The only internal consistency that you can find in that is discriminatory practices, really.
Yeah, so I had if we'd had more time, I had a whole bunch of things I was thinking about related to race that I was going to get into. I'm not going to do that now.
Yeah, we might do that next episode.
Maybe we'll do that next
Maybe
time.
Stay tuned if anybody wants to hear it. You know, we'll talk about that. We have some people to thank. And we don't take this opportunity often. I would like to plug our Patreon. You absolutely don't have to support it. We understand that this is weird times, and we're not asking anybody to support it, especially if they're not in a position to. But if you like our stuff, and you want to support us some way, this would be a great way to do it. And I think for people who only hear sort of the thank you right at the end, we really do appreciate it. Every time we get a new Patreon, it is like dining table conversation. We get disproportionately excited. And this is, I think, because I'm not expecting anybody to actually sign up from this, but this is maybe more to our current patrons too.
We are so grateful.
Yeah, we're so grateful. We're grateful and we're surprised. And we have a new Patreon recently, and it's given us that feeling again where we go, oh my God, somebody's supporting us again. Now we got more people.
It's not that people have forgotten that they've been pledging stuff to us, but somebody actually made the decision, a conscious decision now.
But it also is everybody who's continued to support us, so we hugely appreciate it. And I think actually maybe it almost feels like I've cheapened it by framing it as a plug for Patreon instead of just a heartfelt thank you to the people who've already supported it. We recognize your names every time you leave a comment. We really appreciate it, and it is so cool that we've got people who are supporting us, no matter how many, no matter how much you're supporting it for. Right. You know, we don't actually look at the dollar amount as much because we know everybody's in a different situation. It's just the fact that anybody supporting us at all is always awesome. So a huge thank you from the bottom of our hearts to Consul Peasant and Edwoon, who are supporting us at the highest last word tier. We've got Mohammed Albshaiti at the Your Message Here tier. We have Shawn Farrell, Daniel Simonson, Aaron Maule, Michael DeVries, Brandon C., and Irvin Ruiz, who are supporting us on the credited level, and Chris Wolff and Scarlet Enby at the gratitude level. And out of order this time, because I had already talked about Patreon, and it would feel weird to launch into that and then say, but anyways, a non-patron who we also appreciate. Quick shout out to Eliza Customer Service Caton. She is supporting your tech. This shout out has been brought to you by an email chain about supported file types for the software you're using. So thanks so much for watching, and thanks so much for your support. We'll see you next time. Komoda.